Hey, babe. This is your old daddy. Just calling and checking on you. And that's all. Love you. And we'll talk with you later now.
Hey y'all, how you perking? I hope you're perking good. So, this is a video that I just have to make. So, bear with me because this is one of those things that I just have to get out. I just have to say. I just have to go through. And for whatever reason, it brings me a lot of comfort for people to hear this. I don't always make YouTube videos, for the money and stuff like that, like people say. YouTube does not make people a lot of money, hence why I got several jobs. This is a hobby. But mostly for me, I make YouTube videos because I just want people to watch them. I just want people to hang out with me, experience something together with me, because there's something about having that experience together and just being together in community and saying something that somebody else is listening to because they feel like listening to you, because they think what you have to say is important or entertaining or something. There's something about that just brings me a lot of comfort. So, especially on a day like this and a time like this, I am really happy to have that comfort. So yeah, my daddy died this day. It's been a full year now. This is literally the year mark, the year anniversary. And just for people who weren't around back when that happened, in the pinned comments below, I'm gonna link the videos that I did when it happened, because I made a video literally the day after it happened, because some people were like, how are you doing a video the day after? For me, I needed that process. Like, I needed to fucking talk. I needed to get it out. I needed to say something. I'm a verbal processor. So sometimes I just gotta say things, and I've gotta talk, and I've gotta have people listen for me to process things. So I did a video the day after he passed away, and I did a video after that about signs. I did a video about grief. And there have been people that have been grateful that I have shared my experience, and I'm grateful that they're grateful, because they're like, hey, this made me feel better about what I was going through. Or they said things like, this was helpful to me because now, when loved ones are going through this, I can understand more or help them more. Or they're saying, this is helpful to me because now I feel like I'm a little more prepared, so that when something like that happens to me, I will know somebody who went through it, and I will just have some sort of heads up about the things that may come up, and the ways you might think, and the ways you might feel, and stuff like that. And so I put those out there, and I'm so glad that they've been helpful to other people, because they've been helpful to me. My hope today is that I will be able to get through this video without crying. Not that I am not okay with crying on camera, because if you watch those other videos, I sure as fuck am crying on camera. I've cried on camera plenty of times. I just hate doing it because I can't talk when I cry. Like, when you cry, your throat closes up on yourself, and it's like, and you can't get words out, and it's a pain in the ass. So trust and believe. Today being the 1-year anniversary of Daddy dying, I've done my fair share of crying this week. Like, full on sob fest, fucking losing it. So my hope is that I can keep that to a minimum, if nothing at all today, so that I can talk to y'all. So I don't intend for this video to be a downer video. I intend for this video to be helpful. I like to be helpful on this channel. So, I mean, I want it to be helpful to me in getting this out, and I want it to be helpful to y'all in some sort of way taking this in. And I put together some sticky notes over here with some questions that people have asked me about this process. And so I'm gonna be looking at my little sticky notes. Yeah, I whited out a green sticky note card. I had to make notes because making notes is the only way that I can kind of get through this and make sense and, like, you know, do the thing. So these are some of the things that y'all have asked me in live streams when we hang out, asking me about how things are going, asking me, you know, my thoughts on these certain things. And so I figured I would share those today and see if that could be helpful to anyone. So first and foremost, I think we'll just start with how my journey has been over this year, because as I'm filming this, like I said today, filming now, I don't know if YouTube will let me get this video up today, but as I'm filming now, it is July 27th, and that's the day Daddy died, was July 27th last year. And so in this last year, I have had one hell of a journey, emotionally, physically, spiritually, you know, all the ways you can have a journey. Some of it was okay, some of it was bad, you know, there's a lot of different things. And I want to touch on that because I think that for people, especially people who haven't gone through like a really hard hitter grief-wise, it may be helpful to know this stuff in advance. Not that everybody functions the same way, because grief functions in people differently, but I'm just wanting to share the way it functions in me in case that might be helpful to anybody, to validate their own experience or to kind of give them a heads up about a possible future experience. So the first thing I want to say is I'm not a stranger to grief, and I'm not a stranger to death. Like, all of my grandparents are already gone. A lot of my aunts and uncles are gone. I've had friends, young people, die. I've lost a lot of pets. And, you know, for all of y'all who are like me and pets are your sons, your daughters, your brothers, your sisters, you know, growing up with with pets are your family. Losing them is losing a family member, a sister, a brother, a son or daughter, and I've lost them too. So I'm not even a stranger to grief by death, and yet this was different. This was very different. Losing a parent is different. Losing a parent who happens to be one of your favorite people in the world is different. And losing a parent who you've had irrational fears about losing your whole life. I've mentioned in past videos that with Daddy, I remember as young as 5 years old, getting up in the bed, having what I didn't know then was a panic attack, freaking out about Daddy dying and begging God to take me before they took Daddy. Don't let me be alive when Daddy dies. Make sure I go first. You know, I remember having a lot of moments like that throughout my life of this just irrational, horrible fear of this happening. And so when it finally did happen, I'm letting you know this was a nightmare come true for me. You know, it really was a nightmare come true for me. And so that being said, you know, as I'm talking through this, just know that's where I'm at with this. Like, I've already been through grief before. This isn't like, oh, honey, bless your heart, this was your first big loss. That's why. No. I'm practiced at this, unfortunately. I'm experienced in this, unfortunately. And yet, So, emotionally, One thing that I've gone through is, all the steps of the grief process, DABDA or whatever, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, those stages. And I've been through, all of them and all over the place and whatever through this whole time. I felt all of those. And for me, mostly, if I would say in the past year, which of those have I felt the most for me specifically? I'd say the depression and anger part. The depression and anger. Those are the two I've felt the most. I've been a very angry person internally with the loss, feeling like I've been robbed, like I was robbed of having my daddy longer than what I did. I had him for 34 years, and I felt robbed for not getting to have him as long as other people get to have him. I'm just telling you my feelings, right, wrong, or indifferent. This is just how it felt. I felt angry for having to deal with the grief. I felt angry for him leaving. I felt angry for how things happened. And again, if you're interested in knowing more details about stuff, because some people like to know, quote unquote, morbid details and stuff, just go to the pinned comments and watch, some of those first videos. I'm angry about how some of the stuff went down. I'm angry about the care he got in the hospital as he was dying. I'm angry about a lot of things. I'm angry about how people grieve differently than I grieve, and watching them grieve in a different way can sometimes be triggering to me. I'm angry about a lot of things, and I'm depressed about a lot of things. And that has been the majority of the emotional experience in the last year relative to losing Daddy. I've had good moments in the last year. I've had moments of the other, processes, stages of grief. I've had all of those things. I've had a whirlwind of stuff in the last year, good and bad. But I would say that those are the feeling states that have been the most prevalent for me in the last year, if I'm being honest. That's something that I've been having to process through and deal with. Spiritually speaking, I've had a lot of ups and downs. I've had a lot of times where my grief process has made me feel very connected to spirit and even closer to Daddy in spirit, and getting all kinds of great signs and feeling closer to my own abilities, like spiritual intuitive abilities, psychic intuitive abilities, feeling closer to that. And I've also had moments of what my sister Alma and I call our Lieutenant Dan moments. I've had a lot of Lieutenant Dans, y'all. I've had a lot of Lieutenant Dan moments. And by that, what I mean, if you've seen Forrest Gump, the movie, and you remember the part where Lieutenant Dan's out on the ship at sea and it's storming really bad, and he's out in his wheelchair with his arm up there, being like, fuck you, blah, 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 come and get me, you can't do, like all this kind of threatening, angry shit, fist up to God kind of thing. I've had a lot of those moments spiritually too, where I'm like, screw this spirituality, it's bullshit. It didn't serve me when I needed it. It left me when I needed it the most. It took my daddy away. It's all crap, and I just want to deal with what's here that I can see and feel and smell and taste and touch right here in front of me. And I've had my Lieutenant Dan moments too. So I've had both extremes, swinging that pendulum throughout this last year as I process through all of this. So it's been intense, spiritually speaking. One thing they don't tell you much about, in life. I feel like, and I'm makeupless right now, just so you know, because in case I was gonna cry at some point, I didn't want to do the whole Tammy Faye Baker bullshit. Bless her heart. They don't tell you much about the physical aspects of grief. I feel like people leave that out. I feel like they really do. They really leave out the physical aspects of grief. What I will say is, before Daddy died, I had not been sick in years. I mean, had not been sick in years. I was not the person getting colds. I was not the person getting the flu. I was not the person, whatever. I was not ever getting sick. I was good. I was set for years. In the years since Daddy died, I wrote it down, I've had 3 urinary tract infections. I've had a week-long stomach bug where I was projectile through every orifice of the body it could come out of all at once. I've had a yeast infection. I'm talking top and bottom from imbalances in yeasts and bacteria in my body from all this fluctuation and all this other illness I was having. I had some unknown infection that they knew it was an infection, but they couldn't tell what the fuck it was to give it a name or how to treat it. I've had some quote-unquote pain disorders where I was having severe pain in several different places in my bodies. I got several apparently. In my body, I was getting poked and prodded. I had ultrasounds done on various parts of my body and all of this kind of stuff, testing done to see what was wrong, and nobody could find anything wrong. And so it's just a pain disorder of sorts, because it's very likely that stress and grief and psychological stuff was causing or worsening these things. Who knows? I may have something, underlying that nobody's figured out yet. That's possible too. That never had that before Daddy either. But just saying, hadn't found it out. Had a lot of body and mind breakdowns, like wake up, you can't use your neck one day. Wake up, your joints are too stiff and you can't hardly move one day. Things like that never happened to me before, that happen now in the post-grief era. I've had, all kinds of things. I call it working backwards, where you just start a task and then you're like, oh, that reminds me, I need to go, turn off the oven for this. Oh, that reminds me, I'm looking out the window, I need to go check the mail. Okay, I got the mail. Fuck, did I ever write that email back to my boss? Let me go in there. And you just realize that you've been so busy doing, and yet you haven't finished a thing. Barely got anything done because you're just stuck in a loop of overstimulation. Just being overstimulated as hell because you're anxious as hell and you brain fog as fuck because you're depressed and you're angry and you're anxious and you can't focus. Grief stuff. So, I've been in a lot of ways useless in the last year, trying so hard every day, so much effort to do the smallest things like shower, and feeling like I just want to be able to adult like all these people are being able to do, this shouldn't be so hard. And some of these things never used to be this hard, but it's a part of the process. So those are the things that, they don't really tell you as much about, that stuff can happen. There's books out there. I like Pete Walker, Vanderkolk books about, the body keeps the score and things like that, about how trauma and things settle in your body and your body can go through it in physical ways through to that. There's a lot out there on that, so if that's news to you and you'd like to read up on it, absolutely, those are some good places to start. It's just intense, and I wish people talked about it more so that more people would understand that that's involved in it. That kind of brings me up to the whole grief myths versus reality here, because there are some myths and realities to grief that, again, don't get talked about very much. You don't get prepared for. You don't hear people discussing it. And so how are you supposed to know until you go through it and you learn the hard way, like a crash course dummy? So I'll talk about that too. As an example, I wrote down my list here of some grief myths. Grief myths. One thing is that all of those grief steps that we talked about earlier, the denial, the anger, the bargaining, the depression, the acceptance, that's a linear process. It's like, oh, they're in the denial stage. Oh, now they're in the anger stage. And oh, now they're here. And it's like, oh no, they seem to be accepting it, but now they're going back to like, oh, something's wrong. And it's not linear. You go through more or less those 5 stages, usually, typically, but you can bounce around in all different kind of orders. You can repeat steps. You can, there's no going backwards in it. It's just, hey, here are the types of feelings you are most likely to experience. These are the types of things you're most likely to go through, just so you know, at any given time. And they could take a long time. They could be fleeting. You might repeat stuff. You might go forwards and backwards and and that's just typical. It's just fucking typical. So, myth is that it's linear. People like to act like it is, and it's fucking not. Another myth, and this is going to sound bad, but I'm just saying it like it is. Another myth of grief is that people will be there for you. Friends will be there. People will be there to support you. That's actually a myth. Because if you hadn't noticed, when people are sad, angry, depressed, going through something hard, it's kind of difficult to be around them. You don't want to be around them because it's going to make you sad too. You don't want to be around them because it's going to feel awkward. Don't want to be around them because it's going to bring you down, or you're not going to know what to do about it. And so you're like, I know somebody else will be helping her, so I'm going to keep doing my own life because I'm really busy in my own life. So don't worry, somebody else is taking care of it. Somebody else has got her, somebody else is doing that. The cockroaches scatter when you turn on the lights. Cockroaches scatter when somebody's going through something too. People like to act like they're mental health advocates until somebody's actually going through a mental health problem. And then it's like, they're so difficult. They're being mean, or they're, got these wild thoughts and they're draining me to have to talk to them, or this or that and the other. And I think it's totally fair for people to have boundaries. I think it's totally fair for people to know when they can and can't help someone based on what's on their plate and how much energy or whatever they have. We're not always in a place where we can be helpful to other people. And that's fair. That's fair. We don't all have to feel guilty that we're not the ones coming in to help and save the day all the time. But I'm just letting you know, because a lot of us are so overwhelmed and doing our own things and busy in our own lives, and we don't always feel like we know what to do or how to do it, and we don't always want to, get sucked down to that low level. A lot of times we just avoid the person that's going through something, just assuming somebody else is helping them take care of it. And they're not. So it's a myth to think that automatically there will be people there to support you. It's not always true. Like we talked about earlier, another myth is that grief is all emotional, psychological. It's all like that. We already talked about it. Shit's physical too. Another myth is, they'll get back to normal. Once you get done with being sad, life will go back to normal. But it doesn't happen that way. When you go through something that makes you grieve that hard, it is a traumatic experience. And a lot of times when people go through traumas, they are forever changed. It changes how their brain works. It changes how their brain thinks. It changes how they see things. If you've noticed, in the last year, my channel went from doing fun, beauty guru, YouTube drama type stuff to, okay, you know, fuck that noise. That's not important. That's gossipy. It brings out the worst people from the woodwork coming up who are also gossipy, toxic, you know, dramatic types of people that I don't want in my life. You know, it's just so surface level. It's so pointless. It's so meaningless. It's not fun anymore. It's just in my head, to me, in my opinion, it's just, you know, toxic and trite, and brings out the worst kinds of people into your space, into your aura. And so if you've noticed, instead, I'm like, okay, practically, what's going on in the real world? What can we know in our monthly July predictions, 2022, you know, monthly predictions? What can we know in real life? What's going to happen that's going to affect us? Because if James Charles has a scandal, no offense, that doesn't fucking affect me. I want to know what's happening in July 2022 across the world. That's going to affect me. I want to know what's happening politically in our government. That's going to affect me. I want to know, you know, what's going on with some of these billionaires in their life. That's going to affect me. I want to know what's going on with some of these criminal investigations out there, because that has, you know, overarching political and policy and cultural and sociological implications on my life. You know, I want to look into things that impact us, like truly impact us, things that affect us, things that we can influence and it can influence us, things that are, you know, important and further than skin deep, and not middle school gossipy, you know, OMG type shit. And all of that has changed since Daddy died. I just have a different perspective on life for me personally, of what's important and what's not, what's meaningful and what's not, what's worth my time and what's not, what I get enjoyment out and interest in versus not. My, you know, what brings me purpose, what makes me feel like I'm being helpful and serving humanity versus potentially not, you know. So yeah, a lot of things can change. People can feel differently. There are some people that before a death, they are super Christian, and after a death, they're an atheist. You know, people can change big time. There are some people that'll do the reverse. You know, they won't be very spiritual, and then after a death, now they're suddenly very spiritual. There are so many ways that people can change in a big, big way. I've always been a fairly healthy, thank God, person, but also a fairly anxious person. And now I'm like a fucking hypochondriac, like, like, oh God, I feel a little something. It's a big thing. I'm dying of this or of that, you know, because I saw how Daddy was fucking fine. He was fine. Everything was fine. He was healthier than my mom, seemingly. Everything was fine. And then one day he wasn't. And then he was gone. And so now it's like every little sensation or every little thing that feels off, that's it. Cancer, I'm dead. You know, whatever. And I have those things because the trauma triggered my brain to be hypervigilant about potential body threats, you know, stuff like that. So things just change when you go through traumas. It just changes. It just does. and you won't necessarily get back to normal. That's a myth. Your life will be different. And in a lot of ways that'll be okay. And in the ways that it's not okay, you can look for help for that. I have. I encourage that for people. I do. Another myth, when people are like, you know, well, don't bring it up. Don't bring it up. You know, we don't want to hurt their feelings. We don't want to make them cry. We don't want to make them sad. Just don't talk about it. Don't bring it up. But sometimes when you're not bringing it up, you are It's a lot of things. One, it's encouraging the person to also not bring it up and push it down and hide it and closet it, which is suppressing it, meaning that they're not dealing with it, and that creates problems. So that's one problem to not bringing it up. But another problem is sometimes people don't really want to talk about it, or they don't think they do, until somebody else starts talking about it and bringing it up, and then they kind of start to, and then after they got into it, they're like, you know what, I didn't really think I wanted to talk about it, and I wasn't going to, but I'm so glad that I did, because I feel a lot better now that we had this conversation. So sometimes it's relieving for a person to talk about it. Also, sometimes when you lose someone and people say, well, don't talk about it, it makes you, as the person who lost that person, feel like you're trying to erase that loved one. Like, oh, don't talk about her daddy because it'll make her sad. It's like, don't erase my daddy, okay? Don't erase my daddy. So, let me swallow that down. So, we talk about it like this. We talk about it because I'm like, it's a year in. No, not many people probably want a video like this. There's probably going to be very few people who watch this video. Maybe 500 people or something that watch this, which is few considering. And I don't care. I'm doing this because I'm not erasing my fucking daddy. I'm going to talk about it. I'm talking about it. So that's a myth. Don't bring it up. Don't say anything. Myth. It's a myth that there's a right and wrong way to grieve. People will get judged if they're not crying. People will get judged if they've been crying for too long and haven't gotten over it yet. People will get judged if they are out at a party trying to have fun. People will get judged if they're a recluse and they never want to go out and have fun to parties. It's like, literally, is there no, fuck you. I'll grieve however I want. I'm not saying fuck y'all. I'm talking in general to those, those myths and those societal standards that people put on people. It's a fuck you to that, not to y'all, because y'all have been amazing and excellent. And I've told y'all that, and I'm telling you again now because I need you to know that. So, yeah, it's different for everybody. It's different for everybody. And like I said, I've had problems with that, where I grieve certain ways, and when I see people around me who are not grieving the same way about daddy as I do, then I have a tendency to, one, want to judge them for, well, daddy must not have meant as much to you as he meant to me then, kind of thing, because of my own hurt. And two, like, oh, well, does that mean I'm fucking psycho crazy, totally mentally unstable because I'm grieving so much more intensely than they seem to be? And no, neither of those things are the case. It's just fucking different. It's just different. It's just different. And so there's no right and wrong way to grieve. Certainly there's a helpful and unhelpful way in terms of, we want to grieve helpfully, as in we don't want to put ourselves at risk for harm when we're grieving. We don't want to do things that could be risky and harmful for ourselves. So yeah, there's that. We want to make sure we're getting help where we need it. But outside of that, there's no right or wrong way. The last myth that I wanted to bring up is the whole time will heal. Not necessarily. I get what people are saying when they say that, and it certainly comes from a very nice place, but it's not necessarily true. I'm going to put up a picture over here that I found helpful here with this little ball and jar. And it shows that the myth where people think that you grieve where the ball is, getting smaller, and so it's like the ball that represents grief. It used to be huge, but over time heals and the ball starts to shrink and it's no longer as big anymore. And that's not really the case. Instead, the ball that represents grief stays the same. We stay the same level of fucked up about it, the same level of upset about it, the same level of sad whatever about it. But the jar around the ball gets bigger, as in we expand around our grief. We just grow around the grief. We have new experiences. We have things that happen. We have good things happen in our life and other stuff that helps us to grow, because as people, we're always growing up until the second we die. We're always growing somehow, some way, taking things in, learning, growing, expanding some kind of way. And so we're just expanding around that same sized grief ball. So it stays the same. Time's not healing it per se. We're just expanding and growing around it, which helps us to better learn how to live with it, because we don't get over it. It doesn't go away. We just learn how to live with it. So I just wanted to share that. So all of those things kind of, again, segues into helpful and unhelpful ways to support people in their grief. There are some things that we say to people who are grieving, and again, usually we mean full well. We're so well-meaning, we're so well-intentioned. But when you are acutely grieving, not only is there no guarantee that these things will be helpful to you, but sometimes these things feel flat out inflammatory. So again, everyone is different, okay? Everyone is different. So some of these things that I say right now that are typically considered unhelpful to say in grief, it might feel helpful to you. And that's okay. If it feels helpful to you, that's okay. Just know for a lot of people, it doesn't feel helpful when they are acutely grieving. Maybe it'll feel helpful to them later as they're processing through their grief further, but maybe when they are right there in the midst of it, it might not feel very helpful to them. And so, like saying they're in a better place, the person you lost, they're in a better place. Well, for me, when someone's saying that, I get that they're being helpful, but I'm like, what do you mean they're in a better place? The better place is to fucking be with me. I want my daddy. I want my daddy in physical form. I want him here, He might be in a better place. That's all well and good. Congratulations, but I don't have him anymore. And so to me and a lot of other people, that's not always a helpful thing to say. It's not always a helpful thing to say. Similarly to that, a lot of people, especially in the spiritual community, just like with the last one, want to say, well, they're not really gone. They're still with you in spirit. And that's true. And again, I believe that's true. And again, that might feel better someday. But when we're acutely grieving, saying, well, but they're not really gone. They're still with you in spirit. Well, my experience is he's fucking gone, okay? I saw him dead. I saw him laying there motionless. I saw him there cold. I saw him there without blood in his face. I saw him there not moving and breathing. He's gone. So, swallow that one down so I can speak. Trust and believe I'll probably cry again after the video. So I'm getting this out, y'all. I'm getting this out. And this is helping me get this out too. But can you see how that could come off as insensitive? Yeah, later on down the road, that might feel encouraging to me and other people, and maybe it feels encouraging immediately to some people. Again, like I said, that's possible. But for a lot of people, it just hurts. It's like, what are you telling me? They're not really gone and they're still with me. I don't see him anymore. I don't get to hear his laugh anymore. I don't get to hug him anymore. For all intents and purposes, he's fucking gone, okay? Not helpful. Not helpful. Same with think of the memories. Again, one day you might get to a point where you can think of the memories. But for right now, one, you might not be able to think of the memories because your brain might put a block up to all the memories, because all it can tell you is all the stuff that you are feeling and seeing right now about it, and there's no space to look at the memories. And if you do look at the memories, it may not feel good to. It might hurt. It might be a painful reminder of all the things you'll never have again in a physical sense. And so, again, in an acute phase, maybe not helpful. Maybe not helpful. Same with God doesn't make mistakes. Whereas I do agree with that. I agree with the everything happens for a reason, God doesn't make mistakes. When you're acutely grieving, you feel like this is the one time he did fuck up. You feel like this is the one time he did make a big mistake. So you don't want to hear that. And you don't want to hear everything happens for a reason when you're acutely grieving, because it's like, okay, there's a, somebody wanted daddy dead, That happened for a reason, because it made the world a better place somehow and made God happier somehow for daddy to be dead. And so even if I believe those things, and even if those things will one day, I'm sure, feel comforting to me, when you're really acutely in this, as I keep saying, not always helpful, okay? Not always helpful. Try to focus on the positives. Sometimes, if you're in a deep, dark hole, you don't see a fucking positive right now, and it's okay to not focus on the positives right now if you can't, Sure, eventually, in the long run, you want to be able to focus on positives. And if you notice that you are going a long stretch with never being able to see a single fucking positive, yeah, it might be time for you to get some further help, some support, some assistance with that, because you don't want to be stuck there. Totally agreed. But that doesn't mean that if you're feeling something negative, oh, well, let's focus on the positives. That means that the person you're speaking with is uncomfortable with your negative emotions, and they want you to focus on the positive to help make them feel more comfortable. And I say fuck you to that. That's what I say to that. They would want you to be happy, They wouldn't want you to suffer. They wouldn't want you to cry. They would want you to be happy. I agree with that. Another one that I agree with. I believe that's true, that our loved ones wouldn't want us to see upset and crying and unhappy all the time. They would want us to get back up on that horse and feel happy. I do agree with that. But when you're in a moment where you're like, I'm in a space right now where no matter how hard I try, I can't feel okay about this. I can't feel positive about this. I can't feel happy. I'm just really sad, depressed, angry, etc. Then as you're saying, well, don't feel that way. They would want you to be happy. Then now, not only do I feel sad, depressed, anxious, and all of those bad things that I was already feeling, but now I feel guilty, like I'm disappointing daddy. Daddy wants me to be happy. And since I'm not, and since I can't seem to figure out how to be, I'm letting him down. Like, so don't say that to people, please. Maybe not right away. Because then you're like, fuck. Not only am I fucking up because I can't seem to access happiness, but I'm fucking up because, here I go, because I'm disappointing my daddy. I'm doing what he wouldn't want. Oh, Jesus. Okay, so I had to take a little bit of a moment there. I took a little bit of a moment. But yeah, it doesn't make you feel good. And so, it compounds things. So not always the most helpful thing to say. You just need a distraction. You need to keep busy. Again, people just trying to get you to not feel bad feelings, when sometimes we just have to feel the bad feelings because we got to get it out, okay? We just got to let it out. So sometimes you need to do that. It'll get better. The thing is, when you're in it, when you're deep in it, it doesn't feel like it's going to get better. So sometimes saying it'll get better can be reassuring. Again, sometimes it can be reassuring. But for people who are really in a dark place, they're like, how do you know it's going to get better? How can you tell me it's going to get better? Right now, I don't feel like it's going to get better. Or maybe I feel like, yeah, it will get better, but I don't have access to that now. And so who cares if it's going to feel better later? It feels like shit right now, so what does that do? And so a lot of times, not helpful when you're really in a dark place. Doing all of the at leasts, at least he's not suffering anymore. At least you got to spend time with him before he died. You know, at least, any of the at leasts, again, coming from a good place, definitely coming from a good place. But anytime you say at least, watch Brene Brown's videos. Brene Brown does a video on empathy. If you have not seen it, I implore you to YouTube it. Just type in Brene Brown, Brene, Brown, like the color, empathy video, and watch that. The at leasts just don't make people feel better. And in fact, it can stoke anger. Like, yeah, at least he's not suffering. Well, that doesn't make me feel better that he's gone. At least you got to spend some time before he died. It doesn't make me feel better because he's fucking gone. You know, like, there's the at least detract away from what you're actually feeling. It invalidates what you're actually feeling. It takes away from the realness, the truth, the validity of what you're going through, and it trivializes it and tramples on it. So not helpful, typically not helpful. When have people said at least anything to you and it really like hit the spot in a good way? Probably not often. Probably not often. I know how you feel. You don't know how I feel. When you go through something, I'm not going to know how you feel. We can empathize with people. We can say, I've gone through some hard stuff too, and it hurt really badly. I can only imagine what you could be going through. You know, you can honor that. I think that that's fair. I think that it's, wonderful when people have gone through hard stuff and they are, trying to relate to you in that. I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think that's a lot of times people sharing their stories, can be helpful to you and going through yours to feel like you're not alone. And so I think there's some power to that. But when people say, like, I know exactly how you feel, that's just kind of a, because we're all different. There's ways to share without assuming you know exactly how someone feels. And there's places and times for that. Sometimes people feel very helped by that, and they'll let you know that. And sometimes people are like, okay, here's this person going and telling their story, making everything about them, And there's a difference, and we can, people who are grieving can usually tell somebody that's trying to relate and empathize with your experience in a wonderful way versus somebody that's just trying to act like they know exactly how you feel and they're making it all about them. Like, you can usually tell. And so I know it's a tough line, but I'm just throwing out there. We don't always know exactly how someone feels. The whole, well, be grateful that you did get 34 years with him. Some people never have a dad in their life, or some people have a dad in their life and it's a horrible experience, that they're an abusive father. Be grateful that blah, blah, blah. I am grateful for those things. But when you say those things, that invalidates someone's pain, So when you tell them that, it takes away what they're feeling. It's like, I don't want you to feel pain for losing this person, because you entitled little twit, you should feel good that you had XYZ. Who's to say they don't? A lot of times they do feel grateful. They acknowledge that. I acknowledge I had a good daddy. I had a great daddy. I acknowledged I had daddy for 34 years, a great daddy for that many years. I acknowledge that. And I am grateful for that. But that, it's very judgmental to tell somebody, be grateful that this, that, because it just means that you're judging and assuming that they don't feel those things. They do, but they also, at the same time, can feel robbed for not having him longer. Like, my brother is 19 years older than me, and I'm like, he got to have daddy for 2 more decades than I got to have daddy. And sometimes I feel jealous of that, It happens. It's a complicated emotional thing. It happens. It's just how it is. And so it's like I'm allowed to feel these complicated, weird emotions while also understanding that I am grateful for what I did have, And so it's just invalidating and judgmental to say things like that. So it's an unhelpful thing in grief. Saying things like, God never gives us more than we can handle. again, very possibly true, but if you feel like you're breaking and you feel like that's not true for you right now, it just may not help you to get to a better place to hear something like that. Same with hearing, well, they led a very full life. Well, that's okay, and I agree that he did. He died when he was 76. He led a full life. 76 is not an odd age to die at, but I would have liked to have him longer, and he thought he had longer. And so when you say those things, you take that away from him and me. So again, not super helpful. And when people are like, well, you just got to be strong, or you be strong for your mother, or be strong for, the kids, or be strong. When you tell people that, it makes them feel like they're not allowed to have a weak moment, quote unquote. I don't consider it weak. They're not allowed to have a human moment. They're not allowed to have that emotions. They have to be strong. They have to, and when you do that, you can wind up hurt. You can fuck yourself up pretty bad doing that. So not always helpful. Not always helpful. So after that whole long list, people are like, well, god damn. If all of that is unhelpful, then what the hell is helpful? Then there's no helpful way to handle this, because something is going to trigger someone, and you'll never know exactly if this thing triggers this person or if it doesn't trigger this person. And so you're scared to do anything at all because you don't want to do anything triggering. Totally hear you. And I got something for you with that. It's actually so much easier to be helpful than you worry it is. It's so much more helpful, so much easier to be helpful than what you realize. Being helpful really is just when people say, hold space for someone to have their moment. Hold space and be there. So what that means, what holding space, like what the fuck does that mean? What does that even look like? It means be aware that the person might go through any of the things that we've already talked about in this long ass video, that they might feel these things, go through these things, think these things, have these physical things coming up, that all of these things might be true for them. Just have an awareness of that and be there for whatever way it presents. Be there if it presents as withdrawing. Be there if it presents as momentary anger outbursts. Be there if it presents as I'm sobbing my eyes out. It just means don't fucking disappear because you're uncomfortable and don't know how to handle it. Don't fucking disappear. Don't leave. Don't be like, well, I'll just give them their space and just ask them, do you want to have your space, or would you like a butt in the room? That's how my sister calls it. My sister says a lot of times Alma is like, yeah, they just be a butt in the room, just be a butt in the room. And I feel like that makes so much sense, just being a butt in the room. And what that can mean is, sometimes it's just like, hey, if it's all right with you, I'd like to come over today. Is it okay if you have company? I don't expect us to do anything. I don't expect you to feel any certain way. You don't have to put on a happy face or whatever. I just want to be a butt in the room there with you for whatever your process is. And so then being like, wow, I'm not alone. This person is sitting here, and they're going to just stay sitting here if I'm crying. They're going to stay sitting here if I'm venting and angry. They're going to stay sitting here if I'm like, hey, I'm hungry, let's eat something. They're going to stay sitting here if we're like, hey, you want to watch a movie, or you want to, do you want to talk about it, whatever. They're just going to be a butt in the room, holding that space for whatever it is I organically am presenting at that time. There's something to be said about that. And you can be a butt in the room at a distance. You can be a butt in the room on Zoom. You can be a butt in the room on the phone. You can be a butt in the room by, intermittent texting with someone. You can be present some kind of a way regardless, just not disappearing. And if you don't know what to say or what to do, but you do know you want to help, just say that. There's so much power in just saying that. Sometimes people don't know what to do or what to say, and so they disappear. They don't do or say anything. They're not providing any support at all because they're like, maybe I should just give them some space. Well, you're making an assumption that they want space. Did you ask? Because maybe they did. Maybe they do want space, but maybe they don't. And so just saying, hey, you know what? I have no idea how to handle things like this. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I'm scared anything that I say or do trying to be helpful to you is going to be the wrong thing. And I don't know how to help, but I really want to. You know, what can I do? I really want to help. What can I do? You know, you can just say that. You can be like, you know, what will be helpful to you? What do you need? You can ask that. You can be direct and say, okay, I know some people prefer to have their space right now, but some people really prefer to have somebody that's kind of checking in, or, you know, just somebody that's coming over, even if they're just sitting in the same room quietly. You know, where are you at on that? What feels better to you? Perfect. Super helpful. Super helpful. You're asking, you know, because you don't know what to do, you're telling them that, which is totally authentic and honest and wonderful. And then you're asking, you know, would you rather have your space, or would you rather have someone, you know, a butt in the room? Perfect. They'll tell you. They'll tell you. Asking. Awesome. Love it. Just listening. You know, again, if they're venting, or if they're crying, or if they're like, I don't know what to do, or if they're whatever, you know, just listening. You don't even have to say much. Sometimes it's just listening. Sometimes if it's somebody that you know that passed, a lot of times, again, when we were talking about earlier with the myths and the realities about talking about it and bringing it up, you know, the things that have felt really good to me is like, if I've talked about Daddy and people are like, you know what, I never knew your dad, but with everything that you said, man, he sounds like he was a great guy. Like, sounds like he was really loyal. It sounds like he was really hardworking. I could tell he was funny. It looks like you got your humor from him. You know, like, people just talking about him in a positive way, or just saying those positive things about him, just saying nice things about him, and what you're picking up about him or about my connection to him or stuff, that kind of stuff is helpful. So, you know, extrapolate this to other situations. That kind of thing is helpful. It feels like, yeah, you see Daddy, and you see how important Daddy is to me, and you see how good of a person he is. You get it. Yes, you get why Daddy is so important and why he's so great and blah, 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 you know. And all of that it feels good. Same with when people share stories like, you know what, I remember, you know, being with your dad and hearing him, you know, do this, and I always thought he was just such a funny guy. Or, you know, my favorite memory of your dad, Scooter, you're coming to help. My favorite memory of your dad is when he did this or said this, or what I liked most about your dad was this or that, if they knew Daddy, you know. Saying things like that just feels very helpful and very nice. So all of those things are helpful, you know. But again, it's so much easier than people worry. It's like just addressing the person who passed away, you know, being a butt in the room and telling people, I don't know what to do or what to say or whatever. I'm scared I'm going to make it, you know, be unhelpful, but I want to be there, you know. Would you rather quiet, or would you rather fun? Would you rather to cry, or would you rather to vent? Do you want me to be there? Do you want me to give you space? Do you know, like, just asking people and listening, checking in and listening. Just so helpful, so beyond helpful, so much more simple than what people think. So also, you know, helping people with resources if they need it. If people need to get resources, helping them do that. If you happen to know of a great grief support group, then, you know, linking them up with that. If you happen to know of a great grief therapist, linking them up with that. If you happen to know of some really good podcasts, hey buddy, really good podcasts on grief, linking them up with that, things like that. You are hype, son. You are entirely too hype. Those things are helpful. One of y'all out there, just in case I didn't ask permission if people wanted to be named, so I won't say, but one of y'all out there sent me this book, and it says How to Survive the Loss of a Love. And I mean, that's just really thoughtful and really sweet. It was something that they're like, hey, I find this book to be helpful, and maybe it will be helpful to you. You can choose whether you feel like it's helpful or not. You can choose whether you want to read it or not, but I just want you to have it just in case. And you know, super helpful, super wonderful. Another person that was very kind sent me these messages of closure cards, because they know I'm a tarot card person and I pull cards all the time. So they gave me this messages of closure cards. So if I felt like I wanted to pull some cards to get some messages of closure around this, that I could. And so again, they're like, you know, you don't have to use it if you don't want to. There's you know, I'm hoping that this isn't too much to send this, but just in case this might be helpful to you, I wanted you to have this as a resource. You know, super helpful, super kind. Because all of this gives, you know, the person the autonomy to use whatever resource they want, but not feel pressured to use a resource if they feel like, oh, it's not going to be helpful for them. And so things like that. And even things like this, I'm going to put in a clip, another one of you sent. Thank you so much. Of my daddy chimes, as I call them. I call them my daddy chimes. And I find them to be incredibly helpful because whenever I hear them, it really does feel like it's because he set them off. It's because he set the chimes off. And so that feels very comforting. So I'm going to show my daddy chimes. And this one says, listen to the wind and know that I am near. And over here it says, your wings were ready, but our hearts were not. And I always do that as I leave the house and say, thank you, Daddy, love you, Daddy. And of course, I have my own things. I have his shirt still rolled up. You've seen the video before. And I smell his smell. As long as I keep it rolled up, his smell is still in there and it still smells like him. And so I have that still. I still have all of his notes that he would take so I can see his handwriting, and I can see how he was such a kind man that wrote down all of his friends' names and all of his friends' birthdays so that he would be able to call everybody every time it was their birthday. He never missed a birthday, never missed a friend's birthday. He would call everyone on their birthday every single year, every single time, never missed. And I've got his watch because that's really important to me too, and I'm so glad we didn't bury him with that. Helpful to me. I keep this stupid chickie squishy because he had his own chickens, which y'all know of, and he loved his chickens, and we got eggs from his chickens every day, and so I gave him a white one of these before he died, and he only had it like a day or two before he died, but he thought it was cute and thought it was fun because he always used to give us little animals, so I gave him a little animal, and so that, you know, that's our thing. He gives us little animals on, you know, trips or stuff. He would come back and give us little animals, and so I wanted to give him a little animal that was a little chicken to represent him being a hen daddy, you know, and to his chickens. And then his little white chicken, when he died, we hid it under his hand in his casket and buried him with it. And so this is a green chicken to be my part. That Daddy has one with him in his hand, and I have one with me in my hand. So those are the things with Daddy. That's how it's been. This is a long video, a really, really long video. For those of y'all who stuck it out to the end, put a blue heart, because Daddy's eyes were blue. Yeah. He had very like steel slate gray blue eyes. So if you made it to the end, give me some blue. It's a hard day. But I'm thankful that y'all let me do this video. I'm thankful that y'all gave me this time and allowed me to do this. Allowed me to have my process. The sun is setting on us. It's getting darker and darker and darker in here as we speak. And I am never gonna get this video up. I'm trying to blot my eyes off. I don't have bring Kleenexes over here for some dumbass reason. But I need to get this video up, and the sun is setting, and so I don't know if I'm gonna make it or not. I'm gonna try. But thank y'all for the few of y'all who probably will be here and watch this and stay to the end. It means a lot to me to be able to get this out. And it means a lot to me that y'all today have been a butt in the room. So thank you for being my butt in the room. It's really, really helpful. Sometimes you just need a butt in the room, and y'all have been my butt in the room. And I appreciate that support more than I could say. More than you could ever fucking know. So, thank you to everybody. When I say love you, mean it, it's because I fucking love you, mean it. And love to Daddy too. All right. Let me put this up so I can go ahead and do Cry Fit number 1011. All right. Bye, y'all. What did you say? You bought Mama what?
A new car.
I bought your mama a new car.
You know where you had to send all this to? Yeah.
Yep.
I'm like, well, that's great, Papa.
Because he knows you're there.
Yep.
It takes a little bit to get all the ears and everything.
Oh, snap. Oh. Bye-bye. Blowing us kisses. Bye-bye.
On that nest up there, I'm gonna put gas on them.
You gonna put gas on the nest?
Yeah, I'm gonna light them up.
You gonna light them up?
Okay, that's enough on that. Trying to. I can. Wow.
All right.
I can see ya.
You can see it now?
Yeah, I bet you
I
can.
reckon you can. That's enough, okay?
Good job.
Dry.
Yeah, Papa needs to dry them now. Just give him time.
Like a bird?
Like a bird dries y'all's fingernail polish. Pretty in pink, both of you. Pretty in pink. Ivy Ray, you did a good job on Papa's nails.
Sure did. House. Oh, yeah.
So, what did you say, Grammy?
Yeah.
Oh, you can take it off, but it won't take it off.
Okay, take it off.
Papa got his fingernails painted thinking that they had stuff to take it off, and Grammy said we don't got nothing to take it off. And he said he's going to have to stay inside for a year till it chips off. or get gas to take it off. Yeah, I'll wear gloves everywhere in the summer.
99 degrees and I'm wearing gloves.
99 degrees wearing gloves because he got pretty pink fingernails. Time for glitter.
That's it, go.
Pull both your guns over, Ray. Yep.
Did you shoot the birds outside? Violent.